All right, welcome everybody. Today we'd like to talk about this idea that Tom McGonagle and I have had. We call the DevOps Diet. We consider it a mission and teamwork focused success cycle. You can check it out at DevOps.diet. And yes, that's a real domain name. My name is Eric Long. I'm a senior solutions architect at CloudBees out of Austin, Texas. I've been customer-facing technology industry for over 20 years now. I've worked with a handful of unicorns, but probably more horses and donkeys.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom McGonagle. I'm a senior product management engineer at F5, and what that basically means is I'm a teacher. I teach people about DevOps and Ansible, and I work hard every day trying to turn donkeys into unicorns, or maybe even sometimes horses. And as you all know, we talk about DevOps all the time, and the diet is Eric and my attempt at trying to create our own practical formula for DevOps success. And this is our first stab at it.
All right, so this is our definition of DevOps, and if y'all put this on the Wikipedia, I'll make fun of you, all right? So this is just for us for this little slide thing, right? We like to think of it as a technical and cultural focus on teamwork and the software delivery mission.
And so the diet is an acronym, and it stands for Define Your Success, which refers to setting your overall mission and iterative goals, identifying your path, which talks about building, implementing, and improving living processes with purpose, executing as a team. To be a good team member, you need to trust, communicate, and cooperate. And finally, transform and innovate, where you're going to experiment, measure, decide, and act. In addition to the acronym, we came up with a graphic for articulating the diet. And it's coming up in a second. And it's a cycle, as Eric mentioned before. And the first part of the cycle is you're going to define your success. And this really came from a 1970s study at Harvard, where they found out that the students that write down their goals are far, far more successful than their peers. You have to have a North Star. The second part is identifying your path. There is a cost to running DevOps, as we all know. Make time to identify the work that is needed to meet your goals. Your current work pace must slow down to make room for your goals. The next part of the cycle is execute as a team. DevOps is a team sport. It is made up of various positional players all working together, making the team stronger and more able to execute on their goals and plans. And the final part of the cycle is transform and innovate. You have to get out of your old way of thinking. Your goals have to be aligned with your team and organization. The left hand has to know what the right hand is doing. And then on the inside of the diet, we have tactics and strategy. And strategy are the long-term planning, and tactics are the short-term planning. You have to operate in both worlds. Your goals and plans need to be both strategic and tactical to minimize accidental purchase of technical debt. And then towards the top of the diet, we have teamwork. Once again, a team has to collaborate towards some common central goal if they want to complete a task effectively and efficiently. Without teamwork, your DevOps initiatives will fail. Teamwork makes the dream work. And finally, we have mission focus at the bottom. Oh no. We have mission focus at the bottom. And mission focus refers to the DevOps mission to get software into production. The work of the team will not make money until it is in production.
All right, so that's all, kind of like a framework. I want to give you a practical example of how I've done this in the past. At a software company before, we had a strategic goal of shortening the time between code commit and production release, right? So that was our big goal. So our first tactical goal was to go through that process, the audit and compliance processes required to go through production. I worked with the auditing team, the developers, the product managers, and all that. We simplified on a very structured JIRA ticket with a structured workflow. And in that, only the right people could press the button. Notice I said press the button. They didn't have to fill out fields. They didn't have to do stuff. We could get stuff to production much, much faster that way. So it was really successful. But then we wanted our second task. Like I said, this diet, right? You want to go around it again and again. The second time, we wanted to minimize task switching. After every approval, operations had to go deploy. So we streamlined our deployment so that deployment in dev was exactly like deployment in production. It can be done with a button press. So after that, we got it to, after the product owner approved of a release, they would press a button and it would go to UAT. They would press a button and it would go to production. Yes, I said that. The product owner would deploy to production. So this is some kind of simple example. We've got a whole bunch more. We'd love to talk to you. We're going to probably do an open space. So come and join us. We'd like to talk more about it. Usually I took longer, but I think I'm talking fast. That's good. So yeah, My name's Eric, Tom McGonagle, DevOps Diet. We'll be talking later on, and thanks for your time.
Thanks for your time, everybody.
All right, cool. Up next, we've got Theo Skolnik.
Hi, I'm Theo. I work at ThoughtWorks, and I'm really sick of the word DevOps. Everyone's always talking about it. They claim they're doing it. They describe it as this little secret sauce you can sprinkle around to solve your problems when really you can't. Things are a lot more complex. Ultimately, it comes down to breaking down silos, getting people talking to each other and getting along. I think this is what people are getting at when they say that DevOps is about culture, and it starts with people, right? So today, I'm here because I want to talk about these 5 phases that I've seen teams go through when they're facilitating culture shifts. And so, this is something that I think, like, if you're looking to bring culture shift or DevOps practices to your organization, you'll walk away with something. I'll be talking about the 5 phases from the perspective of a recent project, a client project that I was on. We were creating a new product, and it involved a suite of APIs, and my team was responsible for making sure those APIs had an automated path to production. In the beginning of our project, things would break. We got hundreds of Slack messages, and this resulted in an endless blame game. And we realized that this pain stemmed from built-up tribal knowledge on teams. None of our teams had a common understanding of how APIs were supposed to interact with each other. But on the flip side, admitting that you're feeling pain is humanizing, and it brings people together, and they can empathize with each other and start to build trust. So our idea was to start to break down these knowledge silos. We hit up developers, or we wanted to hit up developers, get them to share their knowledge, put it on a dashboard, and display this information publicly. So we started thinking about how to do this. We drew out all of our ideas. We wrote some pretty shitty code. We automated nothing, but we didn't really care about that. What we wanted to do was really care about the developers who were going to be using the tool and the overall experience that they were going to have. So this phase felt slightly uncomfortable, but pretty secure. Our team needed the freedom to be able to explore new ways of doing things, and it's this process of finding a solution where you actually grow, and it's by far the most interesting as well. So with the tool and infrastructure that our team created, we were able to create this solid foundation for our developers to be able to build on. We reached out to them, gave them documentation, demoed the tool, and we sat down and paired with them to write new dashboards. Within hours, developers were contributing beautiful and meaningful content. We empowered them so that they could start painting and sharing their own picture of what was happening with their applications. Involving developers early on during this creative process gives them a sense of agency and control. These are the building blocks that you need in order to create autonomous teams that can affect positive change in the outcomes of the applications that you're building. So to automate this process, we created a single repository where we stored all of our dashboards as code. So anytime somebody contributed to this repo, it would kick off a pipeline, push those dashboards straight to that public space for people to view. So we learned that the simpler the tool, the more adoption you'll get. By abstracting out a lot of complex knowledge, we had contributions that were coming from over 7 teams, and some of these people weren't even developers, which is pretty amazing. We also created alerts that would trigger under certain notifications or under certain conditions. And the alerts contained embedded runbooks in them so that any single person from any team could fix the problem without needing specialized knowledge. Over time, we measured our success, and we experienced far fewer outages with very quick times to recovery. But more importantly, we started seeing drastic changes in our Slack conversations, and instead of blaming each other, we were working together. We also shared some of these dashboards with executives at the company that we were working with. They loved this overall visibility into the health of their applications, and they started appreciating developers at showcases, which I know developers probably want some more of that. But there were times when our tool failed and we had to go back through the phases. But this is actually a really good sign. It means that people are engaged and they're giving you feedback, and this is the only way that you're going to continuously improve. So an example of this was when we started experiencing alert fatigue. We were just being inundated by alerts, and we became desensitized to them and honestly stopped responding to them altogether, which is like a really big problem. So we went back through the phases, we felt pain, and then we came up with a fix. But ultimately, when you're going through these kinds of cultural shifts, you can use these 5 phases to bring you through every single stage. And while things will inevitably break, I think it's important to remember that we all have the power to choose how we respond. Thank you.
All right, great. That one. Up next, we got Matthias Johnson.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Matthias, and I'd like to talk about 3 seemingly random topics: cleaning, sharing, and thinking. They've been a vital part of my DevOps journey, and for each I'll share a simple hack that has served me well. The first hack is about keeping things tidy. It doesn't have much to do with saving space, but it's about making things easier to clean, which in turn lets me get back to more interesting work. I create a lot of temp files, and I normally dump them in the current directory. Often I use a great name like dump, out, or just a single letter, and it's really quick and easy, but the cleanup's always a bit tedious. I've also committed and pushed more than one of those files and really wanted to avoid that. So I experimented with a single directory for all temp files. I tried adding a date stamp to the name. I tried sticking to just one name, but none of those really worked much better. So then I decided I'm going to use _s as the extension for all of my temp and scratch files. Just a couple of characters at the end of the name lets me clean things quickly with just a simple find command. And purging only files of a certain age is just as easy. There's virtually no mental friction in that process. Nothing else uses that extension, and so I'm confident in blowing those files away. And as an added bonus, it also works for directories. The second hack is about sharing, and it's an idea at the heart of open source and DevOps. There's an underlying thread of sharing knowledge to both, and sharing knowledge is what we're all expected to do as part of a team. So, how do you best share the knowledge? In many organizations, it's really common to get people together for a knowledge transfer meeting. You get one person sharing their knowledge and imparting wisdom to the rest of the team. It works okay, but I feel there's a better way, and it's documentation. It outlasts the meeting, is available during vacation, and it also helps the creator remember. And I know that's nothing new, but it's hard to commit to and even harder to get others to follow suit. So I don't call it documentation. Instead, I call them notes, and I keep them terse. A lot of times it's just a single page, some cut and pastables, a screenshot, and a comment for each. I share those in advance of the knowledge transfer, and it always makes the meeting more effective. Likewise, when I'm invited to such a meeting, I send a quick email to the host. It says, "I'd like to prepare for your meeting. Can you point me at your notes?" Again, I avoid that scary D word, and oftentimes I get some notes in my email. The last hack has had the largest impact on me, and it's about 3 questions that help us communicate more thoughtfully. The questions have been attributed to a few people, but the real credit belongs to a poet named Mary Ann Pietzker. In her poem titled, "Is It True? Is It Necessary? Is It Kind?" she suggests asking those 3 questions before speaking. The concept seems obvious, but it's difficult in practice, and I had a great lesson on this a long time ago. During a meeting, I disagreed with a colleague about her manual way of managing user accounts. I've never liked manual processes, and I put forth an enthusiastic, passionate, and well-reasoned argument in favor of automation. And I was very pleased with how well I articulated my argument, and I shared that with a good friend who had also attended the meeting. He stopped me, and he said, I quote, "Dude, you know you sounded like a complete asshole." As engineers, it's easy to assume we speak truth and rely on facts, and it's just as easy to convince ourselves of the necessity to speak. It's when you ask if what you're about to say is kind that things get a whole lot harder. I certainly felt my argument was true, but I didn't need to disagree publicly. With respect to kindness, however, I really missed the mark. In the end, I didn't get my way, And worse, I made others feel bad only to look like an ass. Now, I'm not suggesting we blindly polish all turds. As engineers, we do have to maintain standards, but standards don't prohibit kindness. Choosing to interact in a kind and respectful way moves the whole team in a positive direction. I found these 3 hacks valuable regardless of the tools I'm currently using. They're simple, broadly applicable, and they help me keep things clean, share liberally, and think before I speak. My name is Matthias. I'm an independent consultant. I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so please find me after this or reach out online. Thank you.
Right on, those are some great hacks. All right, up next we got Aaron Aldrich.
Hello, I'm Aaron Aldrich. So I'm Aaron Aldrich. I work for Elastic as a developer advocate, and that talk was a great transition. I want to talk about what happens when we screw up the being kind part, and we need to fix it. These are lessons we've learned from complex systems and how they apply to people. I believe our relationships operate the same way. So some definitions. Complex systems by nature have a lot of moving parts, and they're generally unknowable as a whole, so the same input doesn't necessarily lead to the same output every time. Things change when we're not looking. These are literally what those letters meant at the beginning of the talk, but I'm framing it as it applies to people, not necessarily just computers, and making the conjecture that we want to optimize to repair things when they break rather than try to avoid failure altogether. I think it's a better way to optimize our systems. We also need to understand there's no root cause to failure in complex systems and consequently relationships. This is true. There's too many things moving and changing for there to be one thing that caused it to go wrong for you to go back to. It doesn't mean there can't be events that catalyze it, but it changes. When we try to optimize for known problems, we create rigid structures that don't deal with the unknowns. We run into unknown problems, we don't know how to fix it. We get tech debt, we get things that break in weird ways that cause us to fix our systems wrong. You can get catastrophic failures and buildup of tech debt along the way. And this debt that happens with technology can happen with people too. There's relational debt when we interact and something goes wrong. Sometimes when it goes right, it's a good thing. We kind of both walk away with value, or we can both have a deficit in that relationship as well. And surprise, all debt, whether real, technical, or relational, will come due. And ideally, you pay it back early rather than waiting until problems. But it's okay. It's okay if we transact and have this debt. Understanding those failure endpoints are valuable for how we learn how to operate correctly. We know where the edge is, so we know how to avoid it or how to push right up to it. We can excel and grow if we know when it's okay to push into that area that might be uncomfortable, and we become better as a result, and when we really need to hold back, when it's better to comfort and push away from that. Much like error budgets, right? When can we push, when do we need to hold back? So some techniques, and part of this all depends on blameless culture. So if you don't have a blameless culture, and you're more interested in pointing fingers at whose fault it was, it doesn't matter. Don't try to go beyond that. You need to fix that first. But if we're interested in solving problems, we've got some lessons we can learn. So my team in Elastic is 14 people in 10 countries and 8 time zones. We don't all speak English primarily. We usually speak asynchronously through text. Translations are hard. So one thing we do is assume good intent. Usually we're on the same team, and we don't mean to offend someone or cause problems there. So we need to start with that assumption that there's a misunderstanding, and we can correct that, and that everyone's willing to do that. We want to be on the same side. Sometimes it's hard. We also have a /Zoom command in our Slack team. So when we are in abstractions and text and asynchronous communication isn't working, we can create a video chat, get face-to-face, hear inflections, see expressions, and really break down those translation barriers to get one-to-one. The other side of that is that two-way communication, where you understand each other, is better than shouting into the void. Sorry for Twitter's business model. But you really want to make sure that you're both being heard, because otherwise it just escalates the argument, right? You just keep both getting louder, trying to make sure the other person hears you. So you can try things like, what you're saying is X, where that's verbatim what they've said. And what I'm hearing is Y is that impact that it has on you, right? So you understand, I understand you're not saying this, but that's what I'm feeling when you say it, right? So it puts you both on the same page with that. Conflict still happens. How do we troubleshoot it? Similar to how we troubleshoot other problems, nonviolent communication gives us a framework for breaking down a conflict into component parts and looking at each one of those to see where we've gone wrong and try and improve that. It starts with observations, which are objective, right? They're things you can see and hear. They're not your judgments. You can't evaluate how someone felt about something, but you can say what they did, and you can say what you heard. Your feelings are something that you really want to get to your actual feelings. Try as we might, we're still controlled by like hormones because we're squishy meat things. So it's important to say that it made you feel sad or angry or scared when someone said that. That's important to communicate. Not just what you're thinking about it, but actually what you feel. And then what you need, maybe you just needed some rest, right? I need play. I need some recreational time. I've been working too hard on this. That's really what I need, and that's what I'm missing out on this conversation. And the last portion of it also is requests. These are important to be requests and not demands. You have to request something knowing full well the answer could be no. There's a lot more resources and a lot more to go into this. I'd love to talk to you outside of this. Probably have an open space as well, hopefully, maybe. If not, corner me, contact me. Here's more resources. And great, thank you.
Right on. All right, great. So up next, we got Matt Reynolds.
Hi, my name is Matt Reynolds. I'm a senior engineer in the Data and Infrastructure Group for Ibotta, a rewarded shopping app built here in Denver. And my talk here today is about how building tools can make your life, dev or ops, a little easier. So first, the problem. Like the fighter pilots this theory was originally designed for, companies are trying to get around this loop faster and faster and learn from the changes they introduce to their customer base before their competitors can match them. So to achieve this, they're introducing more independent teams with greater autonomy to produce their systems, breaking the old release trains and deploying independently at a pace that works for the individual team. So the traditional ops team at the end of the line was already in trouble, but now with product managers driving functional requirements in all of these teams, there are rarely enough operations people to embed and support on all of those non-functional issues. To overcome this, we need to help developers become more self-sufficient, to ensure that as much as possible, operational concerns are built in from the ground up by working with development to pave a road to production with tools. There are opportunities to provide tooling throughout the life cycle of a service, starting with service template generators to get you going faster and help standardize approaches. Yeoman is a great template tool. There's even a Yeoman generator. Using something like Terraform template modules is a good starting point in helping devs provision their own resources. But you'll also want to build guardrails with alerts for things like cost overrun and security issues so that you can trust but verify. Building libraries for your supported languages can make it easier for developers to include things that make their services easier to support, like structured logging, transaction tracing, and monitoring, along with configuration and secrets management solutions. Docker with Compose can make it easier for devs to work locally with multiple services, but then mocking, stubbing, contract testing, and controlled testing in production can reduce the need for large-scale staging environments and the overhead they impose. Based on the conventions we've established with earlier tools, we can now automate things like connecting to log aggregators, building standard dashboards and alerts, and a common way to deploy or roll back changes, making you build it, you own it more of a reality. Building these tools helps us to standardize our approach so there's less reinventing the wheel. It allows people to move more easily between teams and projects and reduces the need for specialist knowledge on each team, and also the time required for common operations. This should reduce bottlenecks waiting for access to specialists and allow them to do more impactful work, like writing more tools, or perhaps working on reducing infrastructure spend or chaos testing. If there's a big new initiative, and let's face it, there often is, you may be able to drive a top-down change by advocating for how internal tools could help the company achieve its goal. Just remember to build a case on the business benefits and not the technology tools. But you also need to build from the bottom up. You'll usually want some kind of concrete example you can point to strengthen your use case. So find a pain point, some repetitive manual process, and build a tool to help reduce that friction. You want to make sure that people actually use the things you've built. So look for early adopters, prepared for some pain, get them trying early rough versions of your tools, and then iterate on that feedback before you open up to a wider audience. Be sure to focus on the main use case. Along with that, you really need to listen to the users of your tools, empathize and understand their pain points, Actively solicit feedback. It won't always be nice, but try and find the underlying issue that's causing the frustration so you can do something about it. Congratulations, you've created a bunch of tools. How do you keep them relevant and up to date? Well, try and adopt an internal open tools source approach. Accept PRs from users and help them take control when they're mature. Make use of your early adopters as evangelists. They can help publicize and help with low-level support questions. How-tos and troubleshooting guides can help with self-service, but you really need an open support channel people can reach you on. Internal tools doesn't just have to be about dev and ops. You could expand this principle to other areas in the organization, such as data engineering, analytics, and business support teams. Maybe even work with your HR or IT team for easier onboarding. Hopefully you've seen that by developing your own tools, you can help alleviate the pressure on your operations specialists, empower developers to own more of the process, and improve the operational readiness of your services. Thank you.
All right. Oh. There we go. All right. Great. So up next, we got Lovisa Svallingson.
Svallingson. You did great. Cool. Hi, so my name is Lovisa, and in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about distributed tracing and ways in which you can use it at your company today. The last few years, more and more companies have abandoned the monolith architecture in favor of moving towards microservices. And microservices are great as they can provide encapsulation of functionality, make your system more flexible, and may also improve code quality as your developers only need to focus on just a few of them. If you're running this kind of architecture, it's also very likely that you are dealing with containers and maybe also a container orchestration tool. And that's great, they do a lot for you, but your visibility is degraded. Kubernetes will restart your containers for you if they're not responding to health checks to ensure that your actual state of your cluster, oh my God, I'm so late. And these are really great, but things have changed on your feet and whatever. So you can get individual information about your individual services, but what about your system as a whole? You need to find a way to keep your logs in context as information is moving through your system. Your application is ephemeral, but always available, consisting of services running and coming and going. You can have these services log their activity from within the cluster, but it doesn't really mean much in isolation. Let's say that you have a service reporting an error. It doesn't really tell you where it is happening. I'm sorry, I'm so lost. This way. So when this happens, it only happens sporadically, and you need to focus on actually solving the problem instead of just researching it. Gathering context is something that you shouldn't necessarily have to do as a developer, but it's something that can be automated and done with code. And this was a problem that engineers at Google realized when they started adopting microservices a decade or so back. And they developed Dapper. In 2010, they published this paper which describes their distributed tracing protocol. In the Dapper protocol, a sequence of events is called a trace. And a trace is made up of small spans, which are just individual events. And a span can be like a form submission or an event or a button click or something like that. And spans, they know where they fall in the trace thanks to their parent ID that they have. And that refers to the span that was submitted right before them. They also have a start and end time, which makes it excellent in performance debugging like this. So you can visualize the traces and see how long each individual event took. To get more out of your traces, you can also add application-specific annotations, such as a user ID or other page-specific information that the user is on. So since span can carry any kind of data, there's a lot of functionality that you can build on top of this, and that is really great. So distributed tracing is really a true DevOps tool because you need to do a lot of infrastructure work as well as coding. And hopefully you will implement your tracing system together with the developers owning that service. So this is not the job of a single team. It should be a cross-team effort. And to get people on board with this extra work, you really need to convince them and have them realize the advantages of having a really good distributed tracing system. For your developers, it can make them detect performance issues, give more information about bugs and defects, and your data science team can do a lot of really cool analysis on top of this data set. They can do a certain analysis that will help your UX team. For example, they can know what a user did exactly right before uploading a photo or right after it and streamline that process. They can also find out and see if it takes too long for a user to find what they're looking for. Your product team can also use the distributed traces as additional context when making decisions about what features to invest in and which ones to deprecate. Also, since traces can be attributed to individual users, your support team can also benefit from knowing what a user did exactly to leading up to this point that they're calling you about. So, I've convinced you. This is what you're missing. Your team and your company really needs a distributed tracing system, but how do you get started? So, thankfully, you don't need to create your own system from scratch. The distributed tracing community has come a really long way, and there's a lot of really great open source tools. So Open Tracing is a CNCF project that aims to be a vendor-neutral standard of traces. And they have several instrumentation languages in a lot of different languages. So you can implement your applications with Open Tracing and plug it into any kind of distributed tracing system like Zipkin or Jaeger or AppDash or something like that. So I recommend that if you don't already have this installed, start small, add traces to one part of your application, and see what kind of information you can get. And the road to observability is long, may not lead you anywhere, but hopefully you'll develop really good monitoring along the way. Great, thank you so much for listening. Thanks to the organizers.
All right, great. So up next, we got Kaylee Koch.
Thanks, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name's Kaylee Koch. I'm studying IO psychology, actually, at CSU. And today I'm going to talk to you about something that a lot of us are really crappy at, but we need to get better at, and that's sleeping. And I feel like this is really relevant to your industry because so many of you work crazy hours on call shifts, and then you're expected to go back into work the next day like nothing happened and you weren't up till 3 a.m. So hopefully not many of you can relate to this, but I'm sure some of you in the room can. And then having to go in for crazy meetings after you don't have any sleep, and that's going to affect how you work. So let's just kind of get into some of the nuts and bolts of what this is actually doing, the lack of sleep. You have work demands that are also compounded by life demands that are then now reducing your sleep, which are going to negatively impact both your physical and your mental health. And organizations should be concerned about this because it's also making you a less productive employee. So the Center for Disease Control and Prevention thinks that adults in the United States should be getting between 7 and 9 hours of sleep each night. How many of you are doing that? You know? Okay, well, that's good for you. In the tech industry, though, for every 1 hour you're working outside of a normal work shift, you're getting 2 hours less sleep per night, according to research. So that's why I also just feel this is a highly relevant topic to those of you in this room and to the tech industry as a whole. So some of the negative consequences that we can see is burnout. And I'm sure many of you have felt that, hopefully not, though. And that's when you are just cognitively depleted, emotionally depleted, and you just don't have any coping skills left to just go any further. And how are you supposed to work when you're burnt out, right? And then also leading to this lack of sleep is this concept of telepressure, where you feel so overwhelmed by needing to respond to your messages after work or being preoccupied by like, oh shit, did I talk to my boss about this? I need to email him right now. You're not going to bed. So these things can all lead to depression, anxiety, heart attacks, cardiovascular disease, weakening your immune system, so you're going to get sick a lot easier, and then how are you going to make it to work, right? And I know this all sounds really negative, but I swear it's about to get a lot better, okay? So we can do something about these things that are happening to you, and a lot of it just comes from simple fixes you can do in your own home by getting better sleep. And there is hope. There are ways that you can do this without spinning an arm and a leg. You don't need to go to a sleep doctor for it. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say don't do that, but if you feel like you need to go. But there are low-cost things that you can do as well that you can just implement in your own home. One of the best things you can do, just use your bed for sleep and sex. Stop working in your bed, stop watching TV in your bed, sleep in your bed, okay? That's what it's for. Other things that you can do are going to be to make sure that you're sleeping somewhere that is cool, dry, and dark. So if you need blackout curtains, get them. If you need a fan in your room, get it. That's going to help you get so much better sleep just by following that simple guideline right there. Other things you can do is make sure you have an evening routine set up, if possible. I know during on-call shifts that's really hard, but if you can, try to get to bed at the same time every night and have a routine leading up to that so your body knows it's time for bed. Also, try to reduce blue light, at least an hour before bed. It sends messages to your brain that tells you to be awake. So if you're getting off your phone and your computers at least an hour before bed, it's teaching your brain like, oh, okay, I need to come down now. I need to go to bed. Some things you're not gonna like. Stop drinking so much before bed. It's gonna help you fall asleep, but your sleep's gonna be real crappy. So you're not gonna feel that great when you wake up. Nicotine and caffeine, those are both uppers. So it's gonna make it harder for your body to wanna go to sleep. And your least favorite thing is the daytime naps, they're not that great for you. It may feel good in the short term, but in the long run, it's making it harder for you to get to bed at night, which is why you're also seeing these sleep restrictions. So, sorry about that. Other things you can do, though, is just set up boundaries with yourself at work. Don't apologize for having a 24 to 48-hour response time if you're out of the office. You're out of the office. And let your boss know that, hey, I need to be off and logged off by 5:30 today, and that's it. If you're a supervisor, be supportive of these things. Your employees are looking to you for guidance to allow them to be a more productive employee, and if you're not supporting them in this journey, they're not gonna really care much for you. So if you take anything away from the past 5 minutes, you all should be trying to get more sleep, except for those of you that are already doing a real good job. Sleep somewhere that is cool, dry, and dark. Make sure you're setting boundaries in your life, because you can. And just be supportive of your colleagues, peers, and if you are managing people, of their choices to want to better their quality of life and get better sleep, because in the long run, it's going to help your business. Thank you.
All right, great. So up next, we have David Laulusa.
Years ago, I met an Idaho potato farmer. I believe he was from Pocatator, Idaho. He told me that there were 3 kinds of potatoes. Of course, my 20-something mind, perhaps it was my stomach, thought, mashed potatoes, fries, baked potatoes. He just shook his head. He said, son, there are 3 kinds of taters: the agitator, the spectator, and the participator. I looked puzzled, so he went on to explain. The agitator complains and riles people up. Complain, complain, complain. If it wasn't for bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. The spectators watch other people's lives. They live their lives, but they really don't have a life of their own. They attend concerts, they go to games, they watch TV. They love reality shows. The couch potato is a cousin to the spectator, always watching television, college football on Saturday, NFL on Sunday, binge watching all 14 seasons of Grey's Anatomy on Netflix. The participator is an action-tator, always doing things, living life, serving others. There are many community leagues that you can participate in: soccer, football, basketball, bowling, ultimate frisbee, softball, cricket, rugby, hockey, tennis, golf, ping pong. Well, maybe not NASCAR. Maybe you should just continue to watch NASCAR on the television, unless your name happens to be Matthew Beckman. It's much better to participate in a sport rather than to just watch it. Yes, you might get stuck in right field, but you will be a better person for it. If you're not into team sports, then just get out into the great outdoors. Walk, run, hack, bicycle, or make smoothies. as much as I enjoy attending Columbus Symphony Orchestra concerts, it's way better to play in one. Well, this is actually a band, and yes, that is me in the back, the tuba in the back row. My wife is in the front row, and this is something that we can do together. Sing in a community choir. We will now have a few moments of silence as we wait for the slide to go to the next one. Participate in community theater, whether acting, building sets, being a stagehand, or making costumes. Participate in your own food in some way. Have a garden. Even if you live in an apartment, you can grow a tomato plant on your balcony. Pick peaches or apples at the local orchard. Shop at your farmer's market. For the more adventurous, you can raise chickens to collect the eggs. Of course, the question remains, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Volunteer. There are many charitable organizations that need your help. They also need your money. But find one that you can be passionate about and volunteer your time and effort. Don't just complain about a bug. Create a pull request. Just saying, all right? And finally, while it's great to come and listen to all these wonderful talks, it's even better to participate. Volunteer at your local DevOps days. Be on the organizing committee. Suggest an open space topic, or maybe even speak. So at the conclusion, this potato farmer said, "So, son, the question is, what kind of tater are you?" Thanks.
All right, thanks a lot. And as we participate again, we have Mike Dorman.
Hey, my kids are watching the live stream at home, so I just have to say hi to my family real quick. So thanks for indulging me. All right, so after all the recruiter talks yesterday, it should come as no surprise that most of us are going to change jobs about every 4 to 5 years during our career. And that comes with a problem, because when you show up on the first day of your new job, there's this reality check that kicks in, and you've got all these new things to figure out. Now, I started at SendGrid about 8 months ago, and before that, I was at GoDaddy and Laulusa, so I've been through a couple job changes. And I just wanted to share today a couple tips from my experience that I think can help these transitions go a little more smooth. So my first day on a job usually feels like this guy, pretty discouraged, just trying to hold it together to get to the end of the day. You might get a couple days of onboarding training, but after that, you're more or less left on your own to figure things out. And that's extra difficult if you're more introverted like I am. It takes a lot of energy to get to know new people, and you're really drained at the end of the day. It's a little easier for extroverts, but for everybody, it's really stressful to be in these new, unfamiliar environments. Now, you were hired for your wisdom and your experience, not just the knowledge that's in your head, but realize even if you've got years of experience under your belt, there's a lot of things you just aren't going to know about a place you've never worked at before. And this can leave you feeling really lost. When you're new, it's really easy to lose your confidence, and it can even lead to imposter syndrome, which is where you lose confidence so much that it's completely out of line with what your actual competence is. And being aware of this is really key. You need to be able to recognize this happening in yourself so you don't get stuck in that rut. Just remember that being new and not having all that tribal knowledge yet doesn't mean you're incompetent. It just means you need that time to get up to speed. Everybody goes through this, and everybody has to start somewhere. So some encouragement on that for you. At SendGrid, they explain that your first 90 days are for getting oriented and for learning. And your team and your manager know that, so they don't expect you to be immediately awesome on your first day. And I think that's actually really true pretty much everywhere, even if they don't come right out and explicitly say that. Okay, so here are my tips for making those first days on the job go a little better for you. The first one is ask lots of questions. It's going to feel pretty dumb and awkward and weird, but it's really not. It's the best way to learn. Everybody on your team knows that you need to get up to speed, but they don't always know the best way to get that information to you. And if you ask a question and someone doesn't know the answer, they're going to find somebody else who does. You're going to feel like Bill Lumbergh, though, constantly interrupting everybody with all your questions. So you can preface those with just checking if it's a good time, or another strategy is sending a calendar invite that will give you some dedicated time to have a deeper discussion. And make sure you're asking good questions. Clarifying questions are really key. They're going to help make sure that you're on the same page. And adjoining questions or follow-up questions will help you to see that bigger picture and make sure you're not missing out on anything. You're a fresh set of eyes also, which is what makes you really, really valuable as a new person, because you bring a different perspective that isn't biased towards the status quo of what's already there. You're going to be able to see red flags that other people can't, and this is where that wisdom and experience really come into play. And as you're learning, make a point to provide some constructive feedback when you see ideas for things to be improved. Maybe you've worked on something similar in the past, and you can make it go even better at where you are now. But you have to be careful not to be too judgmental about things. You have to remember that anything that's there right now was built by the people that came before you, and there are emotions tied to that. So you can't say things like, this thing totally stinks, we need to get rid of it and start all over. Even if you do find a tire fire, which you probably will, if you weren't around when that horrible thing was created, you don't get to be judgmental and mean about it, okay? I've been on the receiving end of this, and it feels really threatening. It shuts down discussion, and it creates rifts in the team. So just focus on that constructive feedback and be respectful. Next, work with your manager to set a couple goals for your first few months. These should be really specific and realistic, and your manager can help point you toward the projects that will get you there. Finally, every company has its own unique culture, and it's going to be pretty awkward for you at first. But just try to be an observer and follow the when in Rome, be a Roman. When in Rome, do as the Romans. Now I'm 5 seconds behind. But don't change who you are. Be authentic and be yourself. So if you've just started a new job, or if you're going to soon, I want to encourage you that it really will get better. Those first weeks and months will go by pretty quickly. You'll get your confidence back, and soon you'll be making valuable contributions to the team. So just try to be intentional about these few tips, and that new job will really turn out to be fantastic. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, thanks a lot. Up next, we got Adam Zoliak.
To pull request or not to pull request? That is the question, at least for the next 5 minutes. I've had the chance to work with quite a few teams over the last couple years in ops and DevOps and dev and all sorts of interesting stuff. And I've sort of come to believe that pull requests are more than just this GitHub feature. They can help you be a better engineer, they can help you be a better team member, and they can help you be a better team and help your teammates. And I want to share some of those takeaways with you today. How many here have used pull requests in the past? Yeah, I figured. 'Tis as I expected. So for anyone that doesn't know, real quick, it's a great way to see all your changes in one place. This is a screenshot from GitHub. You can sort of see what changes were made, collaborate and comment on your code. But I'm going to share some other things beyond the basics today that I hope is something that maybe you can take home, and I hope you find one thing. And if you know all this stuff, then awesome. You're probably already crushing it, which is awesome. So pull requests make great for training and personal growth. If you're new to a team, a pull request is a great way to get feedback and learn about the code base. And if you're a seasoned engineer, it's also a great way to keep learning. I talked to Mary for this Ignite talk. She's one of our developers at Waffle. And she said, I come to work every day, and one of my favorite things are pull requests because it makes me a better engineer. And I love it. It's a way to learn while I get paid doing a job. And Mary and Jacob, in this example, are on different sides of the country, so it's also very remote first. Also, pull requests allow you to bake quality in for almost free. With status checks, you can run pretty much anything in the world you can automate, whether it's serious and important, like automated test on Circle CI. Some things you might not normally think of, like there's an example here of FOSA doing attribution compliance checks, because you probably aren't always nailing that, and you want to make sure you're giving credit where credit is due. Or just a build light or anything fun or exciting you want to automate, and automatically make sure those checks are passing without having to think about it. And pull request templates, right? Who wants that? Well, there's lots of questions that we always forget to answer, like, what does this change do? Or maybe a checklist of, oh, did you test in Internet Explorer? Because we don't do automated testing there. Another cool newer feature of GitHub is code owners. This allows you to define certain folks that can help you to provide the best feedback on your pull request and share their wisdom. And you can define patterns like anybody that changed a star.js file or anything in the /docs, and you can assign certain folks that are really smart about those things and automatically assign them to give you feedback on your pull request, which hopefully lets you find the right people, especially if you're new to a project or it's a really huge open source project or repo. Also, lightweight change control. Change control! Now, I know that's probably not super exciting, but if you've ever been part of a process in a traditional change control process or board, it's really painful. Doing it in GitHub is so much better, I promise. If you're in healthcare or finance, it's probably something you have to deal with, and it can be as lightweight as one other team member has to say, this looks great, let's ship it. And that is much better than the alternative, trust me. A really novel use, this is a great question. How does this PR make you feel? This is a GIF, I'm sure you can tell. It's animated, it's awesome in an Ignite talk. But it really gives you empathy, right? Sometimes these are really sad pictures, like a sad panda. You can ask your team member, why was that hard? And maybe help make their life a little bit better. A little bit of a lesser known feature of the Deployments API in GitHub actually lets you associate a change with the environment in which it's in. This is an example using Heroku, Waffle, and GitHub. And you can see that this particular change is in production. So instead of someone sort of interrupting you out of your flow and saying, hey, did we ship this thing yet? It's really easy to go see what's in production. And you can stay focused on what you're doing and keep your whole team aligned. It's a really cool feature, and you can use it with their API directly. And also, you can just automate status updates, right? If you're working on solving a tough problem, you probably don't need to go answer a client or a project manager's question. Tools like Waffle and GitHub let you automate that based on the pull request that you're already putting together. And lastly, pull requests for one. Well, hopefully you can find another person, even if you're working on something by yourself, to give you feedback. I've worked with developers that actually pull request their own work and come to it a little bit later, hopefully with a fresher set of eyes, and think about what they could do to make it better. There's links to everything here, a lot of cool blog posts written by a lot of cool people. If you want to check it out, I hope you found at least one thing that can help you out and you give it a try. I think these are some awesome patterns and features. I am Adam Zolyzak. I am a developer advocate at Waffle. We help to make GitHub more delicious, allowing you to use your pull request issues and things you're already doing to provide status updates to your teams so they don't have to bug you. And when you're ready to move on to the next thing and help your team out, you can see that in one place on your Waffle board. Thank you.
All right, and then we got, last but not least, Merlin Peter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Merlin Peter, and I work as a QA business consultant. And my presentation today is about how continuous testing in DevOps model helps in implementing the faster time to market and improve the customer experience. So the objective is, like, what are the major factors impacting the time to market? So one of them would be like higher defect leakage and rework, and then lower tester utilization due to unstable builds and unstable test environments, and which results in more time to fix defects. So the business need is on-demand delivery, and what the business needs is, like, we would need faster release changes into production and quicker bug fixes. And this can be achieved by following the key process in the DevOps Agile model, that is continuous development, integration, and testing and delivery. So let's see what each of them literally means. So the continuous development is like how fast you develop the high quality code and integrate it with the master code base. And continuous testing is how fast you fail, how fast you pass the feedback, and how fast you certify the change. And the delivery is how fast you deploy the changes to production. And this is more detailed about the continuous development, so which constitutes about ideation and grooming, analysis, and development. So the rapid development is enabled through the Agile model. And the next is the continuous integration. So once the code is checked in, the Jenkins, it kicks the automated build process, which triggers the quality gates that certifies the code, the high quality code, which is then pushed into the continuous testing environment. So the continuous testing environment is a very critical phase of this DevOps model, because it uncovers all of the, most of the defects of functional and performance before pushing it to the QA and UAT testing. And we have the continuous delivery, where the high-quality code is pushed to QA, which is then system integrated, tested, and then UAT, and then which is performance tested, and moved to production. We'll look at the more detailed about the continuous testing. So here we already have the dependent test cases repository in a tool called ALM. And even if there's a minor code change, so all these, any code change has to pass through the 3 defect testing cycles. And these are some of the overview of the tools of each phase that can be utilized in implementing this model. And Jenkins orchestrates the end-to-end continuous testing process. And here we have the key roles. So the DevOps roles are the people who build the DevOps pipeline. And the tester roles are the ones who build the functional and automation builds and integrate into the DevOps. So the key factors required are we have the higher automation percentage in sprint, functional, and performance, and we also have the unified continuous integrated environment. So some of the key challenges are high volume of functional and performance test cases, which is broken into component-specific modules, and which is then tested as and when needed. And we also have lack of test data, which can be reused. So the benefits are fail fast, which results in faster turnaround time. And then we have the reduced defect leakage, and which enables the higher availability of QA environment and higher tester productivity. So here it is some of the IT metrics and business KPI metrics. The arrows indicate the level of impact. And so here we see automation percentage is increased and the rework is decreased. So this is my experience of the DevOps model, which is built in one of the industries. So where we had 0 rollback of releases, improved environment availability, and SIT test cycle reduced by 50%. So the summary is we need end-to-end automated continuous testing process that integrates with the development model, which results in efficient and effective SDLC. That'll give us faster time to market. This is some of the industry's best practice DevOps tools, which is categorized, and the links are given here for reference, which can be utilized. So thank you, and thank you for your time.
Right on, thank you very much.